Greetings. Today's talk is from Anacostia Park once again. We have three topics we're covering today. The first is a look at where we're at with the ramp of the Model 3 and the recent crash, autopilot and its management well. And the third is we've got some ideas on how you can help Tesla, particularly if you're an owner. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. Whoa, this is acting up a little bit. There we go. If this is your first time on our channel, please take time to like and subscribe. Please also note your likes really have an impact in terms of placement in the ranking of videos, so we'd really appreciate your like. We also would appreciate it if you'd watch 5 or 7 seconds of the ads we've placed. It helps fund our channel, and we're also on Patreon if you'd really like to be helpful in our equipment improvement. This is Greg once again. We've been away for a few days. I have to admit, one of my advisors asked me how come I delayed, and the answer is I always like to include really great stories about how Tesla is doing that are happy stories. If there are a lot of bad stories that are kind of negative, we do cover some of it, but it's not thrilling because I know I'm going to get some flaming emails from you guys on those issues. So I like to have some sort of healthy, happy things to report. So our first item that we're covering today is that Tesla just flew 6 plane loads worth of manufacturing gear from Grohman Engineering Division in Germany all the way to California or to Reno, Nevada to be installed. Evidently, the problem that's been going on relative to production of the Model 3 is the fact that the original automated production line for the batteries has not been working out. So as a result, there was an effort made to, in essence, have Grohman study the processes need, build a new system in Germany, and now that's being shipped and installed. To execute this process, production was shut down at the Model 3 factory so that you could get calibration between how many battery packs are being produced to get to the cars. So we're hopeful that after this week of shutdown, we'll not only be getting 5,000, but possibly heading towards 10,000 units of production a month. Because from what we could tell, there's a pretty good effort going on to complete the battery packs, but there wasn't enough volume there to allow them to produce at the 5,000 to 10,000 unit production. Also wanted to note, I can see all of your comments that are coming by. We typically delay until the end, so greetings to my friends in Sweden, but we delay to the end to not ruin the structure of the conversation. I'm in as you know, I'm in a place called Anacostia Park. You will see some traffic, but if it's too noisy, we'll make a change. Feel free to make comments if you think we should modify. So bottom line is that the line is being completed for more production of Model 3s. It's unfortunate because it costs money to do everything, be it rip out the old line, put in the new one, get it stabilized and producing. But I definitely think it's necessary if in fact we're going to get to the production runs that we need to. The next thing that I wanted to sort of review is the fact that there was an accident that popped up, and I think it's a significant accident because there's a gentleman that on Facebook has put on more miles on a Model 3 than any other person, from what I could tell. He's driven the entire United States, parts of Europe, I think all of England, and he had a collision that occurred in a place called Macedonia. So Tesla had asked him not to drive the vehicle, the Model 3 in Europe, but he's been enjoying being kind of a Tesla evangelist. And I may put an image of this vehicle on the front, but basically I think it's totaled. And the problem he ran into while using AP2 is the fact that it actually ran into a fixed object, or autopilot 2 was being used, and he ran into a fixed object And I think the car's totaled. Hopefully they can get it fixed and not have to go all the way down to parts. This reminds me of the fact that when Tesla first came out with the new autopilot, they made a point of limiting the speed at which it was recommended to be used. So they were saying someplace in the maximum 40-mile-an-hour range and down. So I wanted to encourage all of you, both be it a Model X, a Model S, or a Model 3, to restrict your use of Autopilot 2 to sub 40-mile-an-hour zones, in particular bump-to-bumper traffic, etc. Because if something hinky occurs, you can still slam on the brakes and you're good. But when you're doing 70 miles an hour and there's a veer towards a fixed object, there's not much you can do in terms of stopping the vehicle in that situation. So hopefully this gets repaired, but I do think it's a challenge that Tesla is experiencing currently. And you'll notice that cars produced prior to 2016 are not having this challenge. So the next area I'd like to get into is kind of an area that's called cost accounting. One of my encounters last week is with one of the encounters I had in the recent past was with a Tesla owner who also does a serious amount of accounting. So we had to start to have a conversation about the fact that how Tesla is set up currently is really kind of sad when it comes to cost accounting. And he gave me a couple of examples. He pointed out he bought a used Model S a year ago, and we're now in May of 2018. And he pointed out that either one, perhaps two of the door handles went out. So during that period, they had to have a repair person drive out the loaner car, pick up the car, fix the handle, and then bring the car back. And what we were talking about was the fact that he's in Greater Ohio, so he's near Cleveland. So the Cleveland repair facility was where the service people, etc., were coming from. And what he highlighted to me was that even for the state of Michigan, people have to go from upper level Michigan all the way to Cleveland to have their cars repaired. And given that distance, if that person has to drive, let's say from Cleveland to parts of Michigan, that's a 3 or 4 hour one-way drive and back. That's a huge amount of cost when it comes to employee time. And it's hard for companies to continue making money, because it's my understanding that Tesla allocates $2,000 per vehicle in terms of repair costs. So if one item, like the door handles, for example, is particularly expensive, you can have a lot, if not all, of the repair costs allocated to that vehicle that's being wiped out in one trip, where you have a $100 an hour person driving out, plus the cost of the loaner vehicle that's been sent to them. So I wanted to note that if you really want to be a supporter, helper of Tesla, if you have repair issues that are going on, highly recommend that you consider drive that vehicle to your local service place and pick up the loaner from there, and vice versa. Because by doing so, you help save the company $200 or $300. You're slightly inconvenienced, but the convenience methods that Tesla has come up with are at a core, they're good ideas. But in general, the challenge is that you basically have this problem going on of the company wants to do great customer service, but the nature of customer service that's being provided is actually kind of brutal when it comes to the company getting to and maintaining profitability. So for all of us who are fans of the company, think through what they're thinking about doing and ask yourself a question, which is, if I want them to go out of business, I want to let them do stuff that's cost prohibitive. But if I want them to succeed as a firm, we can all chip in small ways to help do this. I have to admit, I wanted to also note to you, one of the other ideas we have suggested is, if you can afford it, and your most common, if you can afford it, one of the challenges they're having is cash flow on hand. So if your delivery is not that far away, consider prepaying on the vehicle, because if you do a prepay, they now have more cash on hand and you'll get your vehicle, no big deal, but they can now accelerate a little bit. And if we got enough buyers to operate in this mode, we might be able to make a dent. Just contact the manager of your local Tesla office and mention what you want to do and where you're at in the list. And I think you'll be happy with the outcome in terms of that impact. What's interesting is that in terms of what else I wanted to cover today, we were really sort of laser focused on where are we on the ramp of the Model 3, which is, I'm confident by late June we'll have the production runs that Tesla and Elon Musk has been talking about. The next question that comes up is, what is happening with autopilot 2? And the answer is, I want to encourage you guys to avoid, putting that thing to the test for another 6 to 8 months, because right now we're in a 1 crash a week mode. And my preference is that everyone be a little bit cautious in the use of AP2 to avoid generating a situation where you're in a permanent hurt situation or your car is destroyed because of how Tesla is operating relative to fixes for the identified issues that have been discovered on the vehicle. I also wanted to note that, I'm going to jump into the questions now because our show didn't go as in hyper depth as we usually do. Excellent question on what's the most common. I have to say that I was really surprised to notice empirically that there are a lot of S owners who use the wheels or tires provided by Tesla that are seeing change out of tires at the 20 or 25,000 mile mark, whereas usually with a Yokohama or some of the other brands, 40 to 50,000 miles of life is in order. Particularly for the Model X owners where the vehicle is very heavy, and the Model S, it is a heavy car, so that heavy weight actually does a lot of tire damage in terms of life of tires, and I think it's worth evaluating that piece as you make a choice between the width and type of tire you're going to use on your car. The biggest, yes, you can do a local tire shop. The one thing I'd recommend you be cautious about is make sure that you look at what specs the tire are on so you don't violate any of the warranty agreements. The number one cost element that's been a problem is those door handles on the Model S that pop out to you have proven to be extremely problematic. So you'll notice on the Model 3, the door handles do not present themselves. It's a one-piecer. I actually think that needs to be redesigned as well, because it's not very intuitive how it's used, but it's great because it recedes to help in the aerodynamic qualities of the car, therefore increasing the amount of miles that you have before you have to recharge. I have to admit there was one last item that popped up this week that I was impressed by, and that is that there's a process where some owners use to try to figure out, if I drive at 25 miles an hour in my Model 3, how far can I go? And the answer that they came up to with this week is the fact that you can go 600 miles in a Model 3, but you have to drive at 25 miles an hour to get there. So this brings up an interesting point, which is if you have a fully charged Model 3, the long mile version, you can go 310 miles. And so what's interesting is that what if you went 45 miles an hour? Could you get someplace in that 400 to 425 miles in your vehicle? And I wanted to suggest this because if you're in a situation where you're running low on charge, regardless of which car it is, not only could you stop using heat or air conditioning, but lowering your miles per hour down into that 40-45 mile range will likely get you a 20 or 25% increase in the range that your vehicle is going. So it might be a thing to note in terms of helpful items as a fellow owner of things to do to, if you will, get more miles out of your vehicle. The other thing is make sure you're not carrying a lot of weight in the vehicle, because that can also influence the range that you're getting with the car also. So, today wasn't one of our more lengthy, crazy sessions. I actually love Anacostia Park here in the Washington, D.C. area because my next activity is I'm doing roller skating lessons. So I need to learn how to skate backwards. And part of the park here is they actually have an area that you can go to. Yeah, one of the areas that we have here is a free pavilion for skating. So I can, fall and crash and all that stuff as I'm learning without embarrassing myself in front of folks inside of the regular skating rinks. If Yeah, that's true. Your range is always going to affect. Yeah, I agree with you. Back in the day, roller skating, I've just started doing it again. Good exercise, change up from other types of exercise. So I wanted to recommend it as an ideas, for you guys to consider. I'm going to sign off, and then I'm going to take you over to the water here to show you, what Anacostia Park looks like. It is kind of dark. I've shot here before. As you recall, the train came on a couple of shows ago, but I think it's a terrific area. This is Greg for Tesla Fan Insight. Thanks once again for joining us. Please remember to like and subscribe and hit the bell icon. The likes really help us in our ranking. Hey, thanks, Jerry, for the support. Please note that taking some time to watch our ads is helpful. And enough respect. Walk good there, curious son. Just a reminder, we could definitely use some help on Patreon if you would. And any experiences, repair work wise, etc., you'd like to share on Tesla, well done, would be appreciated. So I'm going to take you guys out to the water. Don't give me a hard time for bad video here, please. Howdy. I have to admit, my favorite part of this park is all the water effects. So you can see the boats behind me, as well as, we'll have all kinds of rowing crews, etc. out here. So it's a beautiful area of DC, and it's not too hot today because we're rolling overcast and large amounts of rain. Thanks once again. Enough respect. Au revoir, French. Lehitrot. Hebrew. Hoda Hafez. Farsi, Farvel, Dutch, Enough respect, wa good man, Jamaican patois, and adios, et ciao. Thanks once again for joining us.